I think in many cases, to hire somebody who maybe has not even been in your business, but has been a successful manager in another business. Because if they know how to get results working through others and proven that in a business, there is nothing so difficult about your business that they couldn't learn. But it'll be a lot easier to teach them what your business is than teach them how to manage.
This is the Wealthy Contractor Podcast, brought to you by G4 Marketing. Interviews with today's top home improvement entrepreneurs about marketing, sales, money, mindset, and lifestyle. Now, here's your host, Brian Kaskavalcian.
Last year, there was very distinct camps, and businesses were either in the tomb or they were in the boom. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if we talked about that or not.
We did.
Okay.
A little bit. Yeah.
And so, to some degree, the government determined that by shutting down the economy and the requirements to wear masks and whatnot and the social distancing. And clearly that took the hospitality, restaurant, food prep, all those people got pushed into the tomb category. And because people are spending all their time at home, there were a lot of organizations, many of your listeners, who got into the boom side of things. And what I'm witnessing today, and one of my friends and clients who is a distributor of dock leveling equipment, so they sell, service, install that equipment in large warehouses and organizations that need to transfer goods from a truck to the building. That's what they use the dock leveler for. And he said, this year he's trying not to lose all the money he made last year, and in part because supply chains are so screwed up, and because they can't get people. And so there's no question that one of the notes I made about, I thought would be important to talk to your audience today about, was how critical it would be to have a strategy about talent that goes beyond would make assumptions. It's not rational or normal what we're experiencing right now.
Yeah.
And therefore, if you approach your talent requirements or issues with a business as usual mindset, my guess is you're going to be at a disadvantage. So I think there are several things that the listeners really need to give some consideration to.
Well, and I'm going to do something I've not done before, is I'm going to have people join in after we already started our conversation. So I'm going to say welcome to the listener. This is the Wealthy Contractor Podcast. This is Brian Kaskavalcian with G4 Marketing Group. And that voice that you hear is Ed Eppley. This is my second time interviewing Ed. I could have him on week after week because I just think he's a really smart guy, and he's got a really good pulse on what's going on out there, because he works with different types of companies as a what do you call yourself? I
would put myself in the consulting category. I'm a consultant of sorts.
Consultant of sorts.
Yeah.
Well, I actually looked up, I told Ed that before we started, I had to actually look up his last episode so I can tell you guys what number it was, because I have a very bad habit of asking people to come back and not remembering what number they were. But Ed was 112. And so you want to hear our last conversation. If you haven't, you definitely will after you hear some more from Ed. Ed, you are a consultant. Give everybody just the quick, well, maybe I'll do it. You'll do it. But I met you.
Go ahead.
I'll just start it by saying that I was introduced to Ed through Matt Hollander. Matt, I think, is one of the smartest guys in the home improvement industry. He actually, as we are recording this, has successfully exited his business. Had a very nice exit, very successful exit. And Ed is Matt is a client of Ed's. He introduced me to Ed, and within 5 minutes of talking to Ed, I'm like, oh, this guy's the real deal, and let's do a podcast. Let's do more than one podcast. And so here he is. He's back. Thank you. So that was me. Now you give everybody the quick version of who you are.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. First of all, it's a it's a real pleasure to be back with you, Brian. Yeah, I know you have a loyal and large following, and it's because you always try and successfully do bring value to the listeners and viewers of what you're offering here in this podcast. So, number one, thank you. Number two, I am a consultant. I said of sorts because my job is really to help a business advance. I help them get from where they are to be more closely to where they would like to be. Not always all the way there, because sometimes I'm not needed to help them get that far, just to get if you will, the ball rolling, get the flywheel turning. Um, Clients probably help me to advance their business, but I think they keep me around because I do three things that they find extremely valuable. One, I help them get a real clear handle of the talent that they have or don't have that they need around them to be able to take the business to where they want to go. Number two, I help make what seems to be very complex things more simple so that they can better prioritize and focus and actually not be stalled by not being sure what to do. And then the last thing I help them do is I say have courage. Now that doesn't mean that they don't possess it before I do work with them, but I help them to be more confident that they can actually make some of the decisions that they either consciously or subconsciously need to make in order for the business to advance. And so sometimes all I do is say, yeah, you should do what you're thinking. I give them permission to do what they know they should do. In other cases, I'll just help them think through the consequences of doing one thing versus another, and just say which sometimes which is more attractive, and other times I'll say which sucks less.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's not a right or wrong answer. It's just which outcomes do you prefer. So
You know,
that's really the kind of work I do.
yeah. And what's interesting, we were talking about this, I think, before I turned on the recording, is we were just commenting how entrepreneurs tend to be the loneliest people out there, because who do we have to talk to about the thoughts that we're thinking? And people think we're weird. We were talking about this, and we kind of are. And so it's good to have somebody to talk to. It's good to have somebody to bounce ideas off of. But also, I think you also bring a lot of experience to these conversations. And so let's talk about, we started the conversation about talent.
Mm-hmm.
And right now it's tough getting people, as we sit here in, beginning of June. It's tough. Certain things are going on in the marketplace. There are more job openings than there are people to fill them. And it's interesting, Ed, and then I'm going to let you go. But you said something about, building that team around you. And, I've been in business for, God, it's going to be like almost 30 years. I always knew people were important. It's not until I really, really, really have gotten it in the last couple of years. It is the secret, the real secret, if there is a real secret to success, besides mindset and all of that. But when you get down to the mechanics of actually making a successful business, God, people is so important.
Well, any business model is going to have a human component.
Yeah.
And a successful business model allows you to make money predictably for all the inputs. You know what you're going to get as an output, and it's repeatable and scalable. and so you're going to need a human component in there somewhere. And then the question becomes, if you are successful in growing, you're probably going to need more people than you otherwise would have. And then you need individuals who understand how to get work done through others. And that's such a different set of skills than one, entrepreneurs most of them have never been trained to be managers.
Right.
And so that's a hurdle. And then secondly, they tend to hire people in the likeness of their own image. And because they know that those traits and characteristics have made them successful, but having a lot more of those, generally it's bad for the business.
Yeah.
There's always a point at which a strength becomes a weakness. And so that's just exacerbating that for most entrepreneurs. So one, they don't know how to manage and lead. Two, they don't necessarily know what kind of people to hire. Three, a lot of the people that they try to promote from within haven't been managed well. So so that means they're generally going to be mediocre managers because they've been managed in a mediocre way. So it's a kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy why people say, well, I hate I love my people, but I hate them. And that's not unusual, but it's kind of easy to predict that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. So we started to talk a little bit about your take on what's going on right now in terms of the labor market and teams, and what are the things that we need to be doing right now as it relates to talent for us to make it through this. It's funny, I've been talking a lot lately, and in a lot of the podcasts, I'm not sure when this is going to air, probably in the next couple of months from when we are here.
Right.
But in between today, you and me recording this, and by the time this is released, we'll have been talking about this idea of normalizing that this is not the new normal in terms of the boom in
Right.
business, that at some point it's going to normalize, it's going to adjust. Some companies are going to make it and some aren't. So we will be having that conversation between today and the time that this airs. But the talent piece of this, the people piece of this, is so critically important for the future. So regardless if your business is going to continue growing or it's going to stabilize at some point, you still need that core group of people.
Right. That's not going to change.
No.
You make a good point. What will be the time frame that it is required for us to go through to get to some kind of equilibrium? Because right now we're not in equilibrium. There are more jobs than there are qualified people applying for those positions, and as a result, a lot of companies are stealing each other's people.
Yeah.
And not that it hasn't happened and won't happen in the future, but the rate at which it's going on is remarkable right now. So if I had a business with employees right now, if I had 20 employees, one of the things I would do is I'd make a list. I'd rate my people as, I'd hate to, there's people you hate to see leave right now. If anybody leaves, it hurts, but I would rate them in the context of, would I miss them if I couldn't replace them? And if I would say no, well, okay, I would miss the fact that they weren't, that person wasn't there, but the fact is their talent wasn't special. Then there are those who bring some above average talent to the table, and if they were to leave, we would miss them because there was you knew they were not yet their best self, but they were a good employee, and so they would be more missed than the first person I described. And you might call the first one C's, the second one B's, and then the remaining group, the A's, are not only would I miss them if they were gone, but the business would be harmed.
Yeah.
And so you have to think about if I think we need to divide that into a bit of a subcategory, because I think there are those who are highly respected by the rest of the team. So they have whether they have a formal leadership position or not, if they were to leave, the rest of the people would question, why did he leave? Why did she leave? And it would damage the culture that this person was no longer there.
Yeah.
So that's one category. Another reason that they would be an A and we would hate to see them leave is because of they maybe are currently a manager, or we would see them as somebody who is going to become somebody that we could place more responsibility and leadership on. And as we know, those people are precious. And if we lose one of those, it's really hard for the business to replace that person quickly in most cases. So that's another kind of an A. And then the last category I have would be the person who has intellectual property. They have knowledge about how to do certain work in the business that doesn't exist anywhere else. And so if we were to lose that, the performance of the business would be harmed because somebody else is going to have to learn how to do what that person knows. And that, as you know, is very expensive and hard for the business to overcome. So A's, not only would I'd be sad to see them gone, but they would harm the business. B's, I'd be sorry that they weren't here because of who they are and what their potential is. And then C's are, I'd miss them as a person, but they can be replaced relatively simply.
Yeah.
And once I've done that, that's the first job. The second job is now I have to have a plan of what am I going to do, especially, I mean, it has to be something done for all three categories, but the work to be done to try to retain the A's, there's a kind of work that would be different than more for the B's as there would be for the C's. Right now, you've got to have a retention plan for all categories of people, because anybody you lose is going to be much harder to replace than it would be in normal times. So you're trying to minimize reduction of turnover in all areas, but you now even have to think about, well, you know, a common laborer, if I lose her or him, what am I going to do? What would I say or do to try to make that person feel more valued, so that if they get offered 50 cents an hour or $1 an hour, that they'd be less likely to leave. And that same kind of thinking has to come back to the B's and the A's, but the work and the conversations and the things I might do to keep an A are probably much greater than what I would do to keep a B versus a C.
Yeah. And if I can interrupt you for just a second here, I want to make sure that the listener understands where we're coming from in this conversation. This is not a doom and gloom conversation. This is not a conversation about the market, the bottom's going to fall out.
No.
That's not what this is all about. All this is you know, there are cycles. There are things that happen over and over and over again. And all we are doing here is we're saying, hey, here are some things to be on the lookout for. There are some companies, yes, there are a lot of companies that are not going to make it through this, but there are also a lot of companies that are going to do very, very well in this.
Correct.
That are going to grow, they're going to be profitable, and the owners are going to create a lot of wealth for themselves and all of the people around them. So don't get us wrong. All we're doing is we're saying to you, hey, this is an area you need to look out for, because I think one of the dangers of what happens in times like this is, and I'm starting to get it a little bit because events are back. I was just at an event 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I heard it. People thinking, oh, look how good we are. We're closing at 60+%. We're selling, we had a record month, and then we had another record month. Yeah. Now all of a sudden, the owner, he's shaking his head, by the way, for those of you that aren't watching us on video that are listening, Ed is shaking his head because he knows where I'm going with this. Owners start to think that it's because of them, that, wow, look how good I am. And some of them are, right? Some of them are, but this is a bit of an anomaly. And so I'm starting to hear it, Ed, a little bit. And
oh yeah,
you can't go up to that person and say to them, hey, you're nuts. And where were you, 18 months ago? Now all of a sudden you figured it out in 18 months? Nah, I don't think so. Let's pause here for a quick break. In today's world, getting a 5-star review on Google from every single one of your customers is critical. This is something that G4 Marketing Group helps hundreds of home improvement and home services companies with every day. So we put together a free 5-star customer experience checklist to help you ensure every one of your customers are getting an experience that will turn them into raving fans. You can get your copy of the customer experience checklist today. Just go to g4marketing.com/CEX. The checklist will walk you through 30 points in your customer journey that you can improve today. That way, you'll be able to turn today's customers into tomorrow's leads, sales, and profits. Just go to g4marketing.com/CEX. That's G4 marketing.com/CEX to get your copy of the checklist today. Then, when you're ready to automate your relationship marketing so that your customers grow your business for you, just give G4 Marketing a call at 305-856-8788, and we'll give you a free demo to show you how your future business profits are hiding in today's customers. Now let's get back to the episode.
I've heard it said, I'll try to make this concise, that the results that any company gets are 20% from things they can control and 80% things they can't control. And so for the listeners, the 5 things you can't control are what's going on politically, what's going on environmentally, what's going on socially, what's happening overall with technology, and what's happening in nature. And so that those 5 things overall contribute 80% of what's going to produce the results we either get or don't get. So we control one of 6 things that are out there, all things considered. And most times the reason businesses grow is because the market lets them. It's not because they're that much better than their competitors. It's usually a rising tide that lifts all the boats. Right now, the thing I would love, here's a couple of thoughts. Right now is a time to get talent you couldn't normally get. Yeah. Good talent, because people are more open to the premise of moving today, switching jobs, than they would be in any other time. So people are hearing about friends and family that are changing jobs and changing even careers because it rewards them to do so. So right now, having conversations about, would you ever consider being in a business like mine, is much more likely to yield a positive conversation than it would have 2 years ago. So this is not doom and gloom. This is a phase that we're going through, but I really appreciate what you're saying, Brian, that people can be very overconfident right now because they're having record years in growth, but that is not in most cases because the business is that good. You happen to be in the right place at the right time with the right products, and and you should be applauded for that, but it doesn't mean that you're that much smarter or better than what your competition's doing.
Yeah. And it's not to say either that everybody is like this. I mean, there's a few people, and this happened, and we talk about cycles and things. I'm at an age now where, man, I've started businesses in every one of the last 3 recessions. I don't know what it is about me, but I seem to like starting businesses in recessions. So you see the same stuff happen over and over and over again.
Absolutely.
And one of the characteristics of the companies that go out of business are the owners that get too confident, that get too far ahead of themselves. And my message to people is to make sure that the basics of the business are good, the fundamentals are good, that your profitability is good, that your process is good, and your people are good. Those are the 3 big things I talk about: people, process, and profit. And so let's talk a little bit more about that people component. You said something really interesting, and it took me, I don't know if I ever figured it out, but as an entrepreneur, it's very difficult to hire people. And it's really difficult to hire people that then can go and manage other people. You said something like that. You said it much better than I did. But can you talk a little bit about that? Because that is a very difficult thing to do, because what you're talking about is hiring a manager, a sales manager, a general manager, a production manager, of which, in this business, management is key.
A couple of thoughts, and I'm making some notes here. But before we go, before I answer that question about hiring managers and thoughts that go with that, you touched on the fact that right now owners can be overconfident, and if I had hair, we could maybe make a different conversation here. But you're blessed with a full head of hair.
Yeah.
But the difference between being extremely confident and being arrogant is smaller than the width of one of your hairs on your head, and arrogance is an ugly leadership quality. and it's ugly for two reasons. One, it makes people feel, because you're demonstrating in your behavior, acting arrogantly, that rules that apply to them don't apply to you. And so that is not something most people want to be around.
Right.
And the second bad part of arrogance is you don't listen because you believe it's not worth hearing. And again, most people don't want to be around somebody who's believes that they know everything that they need to know. So the danger right now of having such success is you move from probably being self-confident to unintentionally being arrogant. That's I just want to make that point.
Yeah.
All right. Hiring managers. The first of all, you have to be aware the danger, the trap of hiring somebody like yourself. You need to have somebody who has demonstrated that they have the capacity to produce results working through other people. Right now, I have a client and a friend who's struggling with a particular individual who does not understand that, in this case, a guy, his job is not to do the work himself. It's to get others to do the work. And because he's predisposed to be a perfectionist, he struggles watching other people do work that he would either do differently or, in his mind, do better. And as a result of that, even when he does try to get work done through others, he ultimately will micromanage or meddle. And so you really have to be willing, I think, in many cases, to hire somebody who maybe has not even been in your business, but has been a successful manager in another business. Because if they know how to get results working through others and proven that in a business, there is nothing so difficult about your business that they couldn't learn. But it'll be a lot easier to teach them what your business is than teach them how to manage.
Yeah.
So I would look at somebody who's run a restaurant, even if I'm a contractor, because if they can run a restaurant, if they can run staffing and they know how to get people scheduled and can handle people not showing up and having a piece of equipment breakdown and they still have to serve food. If they know how to do that, they know they can deal with your problems, your issues as a contractor. It would make you uncomfortable, but that doesn't mean it would be the wrong thing to do. So I would very much look for proven track record of producing results working through others. Now, I'm going to also add a caveat here. The single hardest position that I think any company has to fill is their sales manager. Because the work of a sales manager is remarkably different than somebody in production or operations or finance.
Yeah.
So you need a different mindset of what you would be hiring. And once again, it is really almost irrelevant where they have earned the right and proven that they have the capacity to manage other salespeople. I don't think it matters at all if they know home improvement or not, or if they know construction or at all. I think if they've managed the sales force, they can, and proven that they've produced improving profitable sales for that organization, they can probably do it for you without that much difficulty if they're willing to learn and you're willing to teach a little bit about the industry. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, well, you know that the larger companies over the last, I'd say 3, 4, 5 years, the larger home improvement companies like Matt and
right.
a lot of my other clients, they started that many years ago just because they had to.
Correct.
There weren't enough people coming out of the trades or the home improvement industry to be able to fill the positions that they needed filled in order to continue growing. And I remember I don't know how long it's been now, but 6 or 7 maybe years ago, I was with my friend and client, Brian Elias, used to own a company called 1-800-HANSON's. And Hanson's had, I want to say he was at 60 plus salespeople. And every week, every day they were hiring, and every week or every couple of weeks they would start a new training class.
Oh yeah.
And I happened to be there when there were some new ones coming out of the training. And I don't know if Brian started the trend or if he was doing it with other people, but these were people that were from outside the industry. They didn't know anything about home improvements. And he would bring them, they were looking for a certain type of behavioral profile,
Yeah.
type of skill set. And they would say, okay, look, let's put them into a room and see who's going to come out the other end.
Yeah.
And that's how this industry over the last 5-6 years has really grown so much, is to be able to go outside of the industry. And yet, and I know you want to say something, but and yet a lot of the people that might be listening are still like stuck in, well, I have to hire somebody from the industry.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, doing the work I do, I can tell you that while your business is unique, the issues and problems and challenges you face are not. They're business issues. They're not industry issues. Get over that whole idea that your business is that special. It ain't.
Right.
Okay. It just didn't. So get over that. One of the reasons Matt Hollander was able to successfully exit the business on his terms, which most entrepreneurs don't get to do,
right,
was because he built around him what I would call is a great management team. Yeah. Now, they weren't perfect. They all had issues and flaws, but one of the things that made his business so attractive to be purchased by anybody that wanted to buy a company like Matt's was because there was this group of people who ran the business day to day and had this proven capacity to produce results on an ever increasing level. And if you look at the people, Matt had a former banker. He had a guy who worked at a Harley Davidson dealerships. So, I mean, these are people who weren't brought up in his industry, but they were really well schooled at how to manage and lead people. And so to me, the going down that path and being able to take that first jump to be able to hire somebody who's not like us is scary. But boy, I'll tell you, it's also liberating once you do it, because all of a sudden the field of potential candidates just got huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
Now I'm going to say something that the 10 million plus guys that are listening, I know you already know this. I'm just going to jump on something that Ed said, but this is for the smaller guys that want to get to whatever the next level is for them. Could be $1 million, could be $2 or $3 million, to a point where you're making, $250,000, $300,000, $500,000 a year. This business, like Ed said, is a business, and you have to look at it as a business. And I say that because a lot of the people that are in the trades think that you use the word special. I like that. Well, my business is special. My mentor, Dan Kennedy, he had a big sign up at his seminars that was, but Dan, you don't understand. My business is different.
Right. Yeah.
No.
There's so many derogatory comments that I want to make whenever I hear that. It's
right.
Just,
me too.
It's just, and none of them are helpful to the other individual, because I need to suspend judgment. They can't help it. They have a reason why they believe that.
That's right.
But trust me, your business isn't that unique. You're unique, you're different, but the issues your business is facing are so predictable for the size of business, the age of the business, the competitive landscape, and the market in which you're serving. And you can kind of like just predict the future about what you do it. I do it. We oftentimes get credit for being smarter than we are. It's not that we're that smart. It's that we understand these issues go with this set of circumstances.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And so in order to grow, you have to start to build a team of people around you that that really can do the things that you aren't good at. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs also, or business owners, don't like to hear that, because they like to be I think Dan Sullivan calls it the rugged individualist, where, I can sell, nobody can sell as good as me. I can run this and I can run that. Nobody's going to do it as well as me. The reality of it is you really only have 2 or 3 jobs in the business. And the most important one is, where are we going? What does that vision look like? And building the resources around that vision. That's really like your main job. Doing the work is not your job. Doing the work is somebody else's.
If you don't want to do the job of the CEO or president, that's okay. But then you shouldn't be the CEO or the president.
Right.
Clay Mattil, founder of Aileron, said this, and I think I quoted him last time, but
I think so.
Just because you own the business doesn't mean you're the right person to run it.
Yeah.
And so if you don't want to do those things, it's okay. If you want to swing the hammer, if you want to, run the nail gun, whatever it is, if that's what you want to do, great. But then have somebody else that's going to run the day-to-day business, so that you can do what the business is designed to serve you. You're the owner. So if that's what you want to do, great. But don't think that you can escape the responsibility, or that someone can escape the responsibility of looking to the future, finding resources, organizing things, removing obstacles that keep people from doing their jobs. And again, the average entrepreneur never signed up for that when they started their business. But they find that becomes the obstacle to the business getting to the next level.
And what's interesting about that conversation, and again, I know that a lot of the people that are listening that are the bigger companies, they get this, but it's the people that are starting out, or the people that are stuck, that this is a tough concept to grasp. It's like, well, wait a minute. What do you mean I shouldn't be the one that's running the company? What do you mean I shouldn't be doing that work? Isn't that my job as the owner? And I think what happens with what keeps people stuck is that thinking of, the thinking, but also the inability to be able to say, okay, well, look, I'm not good at most things. And so because I'm not good at most things, I need to start to build people around me that are good at those things. We all have certain talents. There are certain things that I hate to do. But the person sitting in the office next to me loves doing those things and is so good at it. Why should I be doing things all day that I hate doing? What kind of a life is that? And so this goes to that conversation of, you got to, like somebody else, if you don't want to run the company, great. But what you have to do first, and I tell people this all the time, is that's fine. But first, build it so it's a machine.
Yeah.
Build it so it's got the profitability, the systems and the processes that produce the predictable results, so that the thing is a cash producing machine. And let's say it makes enough money to where you're done. You just want to go back and either sell or swing the hammer or go live on a boat.
Right.
Bring somebody in, let the thing run, to serve you. Then you can go do whatever the hell you want to do.
I think it's the way we've talked about this makes it sound like crossing the Grand Canyon. Leaping the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, I'm trying to make it easier, but
I think
I'm not doing it a good job.
Well, I think in fairness to people who are struggling and saying, I get it. I would like to do what you're telling me to do, Ed or Brian. So I'm not fighting you, but it's how would I do it? I think the first thing I would say is, okay, how would you have to run the business for you to leave for a week's vacation and not come back to a week's worth of work that otherwise would not get done? And how would you have to run the business to take that week's vacation and know that, orders would come in the door, They get processed properly, correctly. Customers would, concerns would get addressed. Vendors' issues would be handled. What would you have to do just to leave the business for a week and know that the business didn't lose momentum? Things didn't get screwed up. And I'd make a list of things you'd have to do for that to take place.
Yeah.
And in some cases, we're going to need some processes that we don't have. In some cases, we're going to need to train certain people how to think and be able to make decisions that you might now be making for them. But if we can do those two things, find the right processes and teach people to think in the right way so that they can make decisions that you otherwise would make if you were there, I'll bet just about anybody listening to this, watching this, could very quickly make significant progress in running a business more professionally.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that hard. I think it's fair. I should say it a different way. I don't think it's that complex. I think it's pretty simple. It would just take some work to execute those 2 or 3 things.
Yeah. Yeah. And it, one of the things that it just kind of reminds me of is it's so much about how you think about your business.
Mm-hmm.
The older I get, the more I realize how important mindset is. I almost think it's like, and I'd love to get your take on it, but I think it's like 95% mindset and 5 to 10% skill set, mechanics. I'd love to get your take on it, but it just seems to me like the people that understand what we're talking about here and can really say, yes, that's what I need to go and do, they'll get the skill sets, or they'll borrow the skill sets, or rent the skill sets that are required. Mm-hmm. It's getting your mind to that place that without that in place, it just can't happen.
Well, I very much agree with your premise that state of mind is disproportionately important. You could argue it is the most important thing. Some people might not agree with that, but I think if you look at a Elon Musk, if you look at a Steve Jobs, if you look at a Mother Teresa, if you look at any of those folks that have done these exceptional things that most of us look at and say it's worthy of admiration. So it could be socially, it could be in business world, but either one's worthy of admiration. They had a mental outlook that they were not going to be constrained by whatever they confronted as obstacles.
Yeah.
So they had an indefatigable. They had a unlimited capacity to remain fully committed, no matter how difficult it became.
Right.
And there's a weird thing about our brain. The subconscious does not know the difference between fact or fiction. And I think it's neurolinguistics, but there were other people who wrote back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s about this. Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, and other individuals. So if you repeat something to yourself, good or bad, often enough, your subconscious moves you in that direction. So if you tell yourself you're bad at something, you will definitely be bad at it. You will suck at it.
Yeah.
and you will be painful. It'll be painful for whenever you're in that situation. Likewise, if you tell yourself you're going to get good at something, you will get better at it. It doesn't mean you'll be world class, but you will make progress. And so the controlling the thinking that goes on between our heads is the first real mastery that we have to have before we try to master working with others. So I think it's really important. There's can I get up from the mic here for just a second and grab a book? I want to show people so they
yeah,
okay,
please.
hold on a second. A friend of mine, let's see, this would have been almost 50 years ago, made a recommendation to read this book, and it's called As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. Do you have it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be right. I think it's there somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. It is 60, 65, 60, less than 70 pages. But it essentially equates your mind to being like a garden. And if you let doubt, if you let fear, if you let negative thinking grow in your garden, it's just like weeds, and they choke the good things you're trying to grow. And so it's not ignoring reality, but it is choosing the thoughts that you allow to be part of who you are and what you're going to let consume your thinking. And so as a man, as a woman thinketh, though, that's what they will become. And, as parents, we try to help our kids have the right thoughts, to think the right way. And part of it's, I think one of the worst things as a parent, we hate to see this in our kids when they say, I can't.
Yeah.
It pains you as a parent when they say, I can't, when you know they can.
Yeah.
And so one of the great characteristics, I want to bring this back to management and leadership. So one of the attributes of a really great manager and leader, because leadership is a function of professional management. So one of those attributes that's just so powerful is the manager who can help a person become more confident. When we help people increase their confidence that they can do the job that we need them to do, their performance will go up. Their job satisfaction will go up. Their interaction with both internal and external customers will go up. I mean, it is such a powerful lever to people's performance becoming what we want and need it to become. And so if a manager is really the kind of manager we want, one of the things they'll do is appropriately inspire confidence in others.
I love it. And I'll tell you, just as an aside, and I'm looking at the clock, and I have one big question for you at the end. I'm going to ask you to be a little bit of a fortune teller, but as companies grow, at the beginning, I really think that the mindset needs to be we're a sales and marketing organization.
Right.
But once you get to a certain point, you really become a people development organization.
Oh, no, that's right.
I've got a friend, he's been on the podcast, Bob Quillen, and he actually just had a very successful exit as well. Lots of people are having very successful exits, but there are certain commonalities in these companies, very profitable systems and processes and amazing people. But one of the things that he did and does in his organization is develop people. He says we're a personal development company. Another friend, and he was just recently on the podcast, Brian Gottlieb, has got over 600 employees. And he says we are a training organization. And that's what they're training on, is how do you not just build the skill in the person, but how do you build their confidence? How do you give them the skills to not just be good at their jobs, but be good at life?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And it's a whole nother level of business.
Enterprise Rent-A-Car, for whatever your thoughts about them, one of the things that's just so powerful about their business model is they have a never-ending pipeline full of managerial talent.
Yeah.
They are developing young people to become managers. And so they have the capacity to promote and never get held hostage by, do we have somebody that put in this position or not? They always have talent because they've been developing it. And then they also don't have to pay an absurd amount of money to put somebody in that role, because they can develop more talent than they need. And they've become what I call a net exporter of talent.
Wow.
And they
I've never
don't
heard that before, but that's good.
as an exporter of talent. If you can do one thing, you want to build as much talent as you need. And in an ideal world, you'll build more than you need, and you won't be held hostage because somebody wants to leave you.
Yeah. So we had a little technical difficulty there. And so we might have, I don't know. We'll see how we edit that in. Okay. So let's go to this. Let's go to the last. I got one last question for you, Ed. I'm going to put you on the spot here, and you don't have to answer the question, but
I love a challenge.
Based on I'll say this, based on your experience, and you've seen these cycles, although this is an interesting one, but you've seen these cycles come and go.
Right.
We're in the middle of 2021, world's opening back up. Where do we go from here?
I've done a little survey of other experienced executives, and I said, is $18 an hour starting wage going away or not? And the pretty overwhelming consensus is it's not.
Yeah.
So if you've been operating under the premise that, okay, this is temporary, and then we'll get back to $15, $16 or something like that, I would be hopeful, but I think it would be, hope for the best, expect the worst. So I think I would be operating under the premise that I'm going to have a business model that allows me to continue to pay that. That would be number one. Number two, everything's going to cost more.
Yeah.
So we are going to be in some kind of inflation. I don't know how much, how fast, but there is, everything costs more. And if you're not passing those costs through, you need to be, and fight really hard to get those price increases that you're getting passed on, and don't wait thinking that they're going to slow down, because right now they're not. So your job is to protect your margins as much as possible. Which begs a good question about, in the pursuit of protecting my margins, would I stop doing business with certain customers and even be a smaller company to stay more profitable? And I probably would.
Yeah.
What's dangerous right now is that you can take as many orders as you possibly can, but so many of them you can't fulfill. And so what good does that do you? You're going to have a ticked off customer, and you're going to be get frustrated with your suppliers because they can't supply. So I do think in that vein, I would be exploring all kinds of alternative supply chain options, because it's crazy. And I also think I would look at alternative products. I would, if I had never used anything but wood, I'd consider fiberglass. I'm just giving an example.
Yeah.
Just be open to the premise there might be another way to do whatever needs to be done, and this kind of environment warrants that kind of thinking. I think supply chains are going to be in high disruption for at least another 12 months. Because there's so many people who stopped making stuff that have long lead times 12 months ago because they thought the economy was going to crash. And then when it didn't, now you have everybody and their brother trying to go get it. And so you still can't get shipping containers. If you're trying to bring stuff across the pond, stuff like that. And that doesn't get fixed in 90 days.
Yeah. So,
and for example, the docks are a problem because their systems and processes are bad. And I'm not trying to take shots at anybody, but the harsh reality is, they can't get boats unloaded as fast as they're coming in. So stuff's sitting outside the harbor for 2 months. So again, it's supply chain at all levels is just in a high state of disruption. I don't see that changing in this foreseeable future. The good news is I think there's going to be demand, but I would be at this point trying to make sure I would think about what we have to offer as being limited or more difficult to get access to more of it than we currently have. So therefore, I would try to maximize the amount of profit I could make on every transaction.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ed, this has been great. Again, thank you. Where can people find you and your books?
So far, only one. I got another one in process, but the ed@theepleygroup.com is my email address. Theepleygroup.com is the website. The book is Let's Be Clear, 6 Disciplines for Professional Management Pros. And if you go to the website and you hit on resources, there's also a wonderful self-assessment where somebody can really get a sense of how well they're doing professional management right now. And so it allows you to take the test. It also gives you a score. It shows whether you're in a strong area or area of risk and anywhere in between. And I'm happy to talk with you about your results. I always enjoy being with you, Brian. You make me think. You and I share a passion for helping these listeners operate businesses that are more successful and sustainable. And anything I can do to help you or your listeners, please know I'm all for it. Thanks for all you do for so many people.
Great. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And to everybody listening, until next time, this is Brian Kaskavalcian with G4 Marketing Group, and this is the Wealthy Contractor Podcast. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Wealthy Contractor Podcast. Let me ask you, did it help you look at your business in a different way? Did it spark an idea or ideas that you hadn't thought of before? Do you have a list of action items that you can take and implement into your business or your life today? I really hope so. If it did, I'd like to ask you a favor. Would you leave a 5-star review of the podcast? By doing so, you'll help other contractors find the podcast more easily so that we can help them achieve more success, wealth, and freedom. And before you go, make sure you subscribe to the Wealthy Contractor Podcast so you get access to the latest episodes as soon as they're available. We're always striving to provide you with great content so you don't want to miss what's coming up. In fact, if you haven't already, make sure you go to thewealthycontractor.com and get your free copy of my latest book, The 7 Secrets to Becoming a Wealthy Contractor. Just pay shipping and handling, and I'll take care of the cost of the book. And finally, a big thanks to G4 Marketing for sponsoring the Wealthy Contractor Podcast. For over 12 years now, G4 Marketing has been the secret back office relationship marketing team for hundreds of home improvement and home service businesses just like yours. You get the customer, and our proven system turns that customer into 5-star reviews and profitable repeat and referral business. If your home improvement or home services company completes at least 10 jobs per month, they have a solution that will work for you. To find out more, sign up for your free, no obligation, 10-minute discovery call at www.g4marketing.com/strategy. That's GFOUR marketing.com/strategy. Set your discovery call up today, and they'll help you set your business up for long-term profits and success. So until next time, this is Brian Kaskavalcian.